सहज श्वेत है धाम, तेज पुंज सत्पुरुष है तह.
Those who would miss to attend the Saturday session can listen to the broadcast of replay on Sunday at 4:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. The aim of this forum is to give the entire globe an opportunity to learn the ancient science of meditation and benefit from this pious service inspired by Sadguru Sadafal Dev Ji Maharaj, the pioneer of Vihangam Yoga. If you are interested in learning the technique or want to conduct a program at your place, and for any inquiries related to it, please feel free to write to us at info@vihangamyog.org.
Jai Sukhdev to all. Welcome to another session of Vihangam Yoga Global Online Satsang. It brings me great excitement and pleasure to bring this platform to you once again. And I hope that we're able to answer some of the queries which many of you have and some of the curiosities that some of you have on this path of spirituality. Today, our topic is mind control, the what, why, where, and how. In a modern world where we're pulled in many different directions, the control of mind has become extremely vital. There are many movements around us which tell us that this has become a more and more increasing phenomenon in the world. From concepts like mindfulness to meditation and yoga, why is this occurring? At the roots of it is the concept of mind. And today, equipped with our global speak panel, we will be taking you on a journey through this concept and diving deep into what it means and what it means for us living in the world today. So without further ado, I'd like to start today's proceedings. We're joined by a wonderful panel of speakers. We have Sanatji, who is joining us from the US, a young boy, 8 years of age, constantly inspiring us. We have Subhashji, who's joining us from Singapore. We have Rekhaji joining us from the US. We have Raghavendraji joining us from India. And we have Shekharji joining us from Australia. So to conduct the beginning of our session, I'd like to hand over to Sanatji, who, as I mentioned, is a young boy from the US, who will be taking us through the Swagat Gan and the Mangal Gan, which is our welcoming to the master of Vihangam Yoga, which is our traditional welcoming to him. So without further ado, Sanatji, if I could request for you to please offer your beautiful divine voice to this platform.
Thank you, Abhinav uncle. Jai Shri Gurudev to everyone. Swagat Khan. आज स्वागत नित्य गुरुवार संत शुभागम आइए, अध्यात्म विद्या दिव्य ज्योति सोमरस बरसाइए, दोष दूर गुण दूर करिके शुद्ध हंस बनाइए, भेद गम गति ज्ञान गर्जन शक्ति द्वार हटाइए, खुले द्वारा शब्द सागर भक्त जन नवाइए, जन सदा फल विश्व शिक्षक शान आन बचाइए, आज स्वागत नित्य गुरुवर संत शुभागम आइए। मंगल गान। विश्व शांति नाम मंगल परम गुरु को ध्याइए। वर्ग द्वंद्व शांति दूर कर भाव भेद मिटाइए। सार्वभौम समष्टि सत ध्यात्म राज्य बनाइए। भेष भाषा भाव जगमय ज्ञान पर दर्शाइए। समृद्धि सुख शांति धरातल स्वर्ग भूमि बनाइए। विश्व शिक्षक जन सदा फल नीति स्वर अपनाइए। विश्व शांति नाम मंगल परम गुरु को ध्याइए। बोलिए सद्गुरुदेव की जय।
Thank you very much, Sanadji. Now that we have welcomed the Master, once again, I, Abhinav from Australia, welcome all of you to this platform. And as I mentioned, today's topic is mind control, the what, why, where, and how. As we continue proceedings, I'd just like to mention, if you have any questions, please do send them on the WhatsApp number, which you see on the screen in front of you. Otherwise, we also have a link available at slido.com/VYGOS. Of course, this platform is for all of you viewers, so we'd love to hear from you and know what queries and questions you have. So to continue for our proceedings for today, we now move on to the Swadved recitation. And of course, before we jump into it, let us quickly understand what the Swadved is. Armed with 17 years of deep meditational experience, the master of Vihangam Yoga, Sadhguru Swadharphaldevji Maharaj, scripted and penned down the experiences which he had in the state of samadhi in the book known as Swadved. One of the most unique parts of Swadved is that it is written in Hindi, in a mix of Hindi and some deeper spiritual words. And it has a very beautiful commentary written by Sadhguru Dharamchandra Devji Maharaj. And it is definitely one of the most beautiful books you could read as a spiritual seeker. In understanding any concept of spirituality, we thus believe it's very important to understand what our master has to say about this. To take us into the depths of unraveling the mystery of the mind, we are now going to be joined by Subhasji from Singapore. Professionally, Subhasji has a background in actuary, and he's currently serving as a director at a company known as Aon. He is an extremely avid practitioner of Vihangam Yoga, and his words and his experiences have a lot to teach all of us. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Subhasji to recite some of the divine verses from the beautiful Swadved.
Thank you very much, Abhinavji. Jai Sadgurudev to all. Today, based on the topic what we have, I have selected 3 couplets from Swarved. In Swarved, there are 6 different sections. So these 3 Swarved couplets are from different sections of Swarved. The first one is from section 1, chapter 10, and it's the 31st couplet. विश्व विजय रणधीर हो जो मन जीता जाए परम शत्रु मन जीत का मरि मरि उठत धाय. I will explain this couplet in my own words. In this whole world, whatever we are doing, we are trying to achieve something. This whole world is a reflection of what our mind shows us. The happiness, the sorrow, everything comes from the mind. But the mind is our prime enemy. It brings us down towards the sensuality. It degrades us if we are not controlling it properly. If we control our mind, if we win over the mind, the whole world will be ours. Under the guidance of Sadhguru's blessing, one should try to win over the mind. The next couplet is from section 2, chapter 1, and it's the 25th couplet. एक साथ मन पवन को राख एक स्थान भागे मन फिर घेर लो पकड़ लगाओ ज्ञान. There is a link between the mind and the pranas. That's why both have to be stabilized at one place. Thereafter, we have to control the mind properly under the guidance of Sadhguru. Then only the mystery of yoga would be unveiled. Hence, with the practice of Vihangam Yoga meditation, a practitioner should control the mind and the pranas both. बिना शांति मन के भय आत्म रूपन देख देखे चंचल नीरजमी निज प्रतिबिंब न पेख. This is from Swarved 6th section, chapter 6 and couplet 139. In this couplet, Swamiji says, without the mind is being quiet, the soul cannot see its own self, as one's own reflection cannot be seen in a disturbed water. Here, a very nice explanation has been done that if we have a water in front of us and we try to see our image into the water, we can see it clearly only when the water is not disturbed. The mind is acting here as the water. If the waves of the minds are continuously flowing through, if there is disturbance, we cannot see ourselves, we cannot reach to the level of the soul. This is all from my side today on Swarved. Jai Sadhgurudev. Back to you, Abhinavji.
Thank you very much, Subhasji, for reciting these beautiful verses from the Swarved. And so now that we have completed our first two parts of the session, we first heard the beautiful prayers from Sanatji, who we thank once more. We also just heard the recitation of Swarved, the divine nectar of Swarved from Subhasji. Now we are prepared to dive more deeply into this topic: mind, control, the what, why, where, and the how. It gives me great pleasure to invite to the platform and to introduce you all to Raghavendraji, who is joining us from India. Professionally, Raghavendraji is a Chief Knowledge Officer at the Independent Power Producers Association of India. He currently lives in Noida, India. Now, as we dive into this topic, I'd just like to remind you all that we have two forums for questions, both our WhatsApp number, which will be on the screen in just a moment, and our Slido link, slido.com/VYGOS. Let's all try and understand this topic in a way that relates to us, because as we've heard already, the mind is the source of all disturbance. And in our life would become so beautiful and so wonderful if this root of disturbance could be quietened. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the control over to Raghavendraji, who will be taking us deeper into this topic. Thank you. So I'd just like to request once more, Raghavendraji, if you could please grace us with your... Thank you very much.
Thank you. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, very much so.
Thank you. So here I go. Thank you for the introductions. Thank you, Subhashji, for singing the passages from the Holy Swarved. May I start with the fundamental question, one that relates to the purpose of life. Before we start anything, if we need to attain what we set out to achieve, it is important for us to be mindful and aware of the purpose of our journey. For only then can we know, are we succeeding in the quest for what we have set out in the first place? So the question is, who am I? I am a constant companion. I am your greatest helper or heaviest burden. I will push you onward to greater heights or drag you down to failure. You may run me for a profit or run me for ruin. It makes no difference to me. Take me, train me, be firm with me, and I will place the world at your feet. Be easy with me, and I shall destroy you. Who am I? I am your mind. For all practical purposes to the uninitiated, I am you. Ladies and gentlemen, since time immemorial, questions such as who am I? What is the purpose of life? Have vexed people all across the world. If we delve deep into the spiritual texts, not just those holy texts that emanated from India and then traveled across the world, but also for texts that emanated in countries far apart and may not have had much cultural linkage, yet these questions predominate. Humans seeking the purpose of their life. How do we address this question, who I really am? When we are children, who am I answers itself differently. When we grow into adults, the answers keep changing and we are always in a state of flux. For those who know the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna says, for those who have conquered the mind, it is their friend. For those who have failed to do so, the mind works like an enemy. So, in a sense, the mind is both our friend and our enemy. Because we see that there are times that the mind does temporarily seem to come under control. And that is when we are able to achieve success in studies, in career, in relationships. while at other times, the mind runs away like 100 horses, drawing the chariot of yourself in different directions. And so you seem to work at cross purposes, and everything falls apart. So then, what is the mind? And how can we control it, if at all it can be controlled? The Bible says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." In Romans 12:2. The Holy Swarved gives us deep insights, ones that we can understand, so long as we follow the path that it lays out. It is this particular passage that Subhashi had just recited. Vishwa Vijay sab jeet hai, Maharathi par veer, Vash kar man aru pavan ko, Uttare bhav nidhi tir. Swarved 1/10/32. The world conqueror is he who, by conquering the inimical mind and breath, has transcended the world. If you ask a doctor, what is the mind? His response would be a tad confusing, because when you dissect the body, you don't see any mind anywhere. You just have the brain. And in common parlance, they say, we explain the workings of the brain to be the mind. However, the mind cannot be located by dissecting the body. The problem in understanding something as abstract as the mind and as the soul for the uninitiated is, if you think of it in terms of classical versus quantum physics. In classical physics, you have so much certainty. You have matter and energy, and an equation that rules that matter can turn into energy and vice versa. But in the quantum world, matter and energy can appear and disappear without any cause, without any correlation or interrelationship at all. The quantum universe is completely uncertain. And to understand it, you have to go beyond the classical way of thinking. The problem is, we think with our minds. So how can we control it? We obviously have to transcend the mind to control the mind. But then, how do we separate ourselves from the mind? So what is the mind? Ancient Indian texts say there are 4 internal organs: the mind, the intellect, the memory, and the ego. Or, in simpler terms, or in Hindi, man, buddhi, chit, and ahankar. So the mind is the man, the intellect is the buddhi, memory is chit, and ego is ahankar. At any given point of time, whenever we are explaining how to control the mind, and this is a learning that I have seen when we are teaching students at the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, we try and explain the mind in terms of this particular exercise, which we can carry out right now. Can we, for about 20 seconds, completely disengage ourselves and listen to what is going on inside of ourselves? Let us try to hear an inner voice, the so-called little voice, that is telling us, okay, it's about 7:25 in India. I have to get ready for breakfast. Or it's almost dinner time where I stay. I have to get ready for dinner. Or I have to submit an assignment. Let us take 15 to 20 seconds just to hear our inner voice. Great. So could we hear our inner voice? What was it telling us? Is it right now in the conversation that we are having? Yes, quite possibly. But is it also deviating from the conversation that we are having? That is also true. So whatever our little voice is telling us, that is the mind acting up right now. And we seek to control it by keeping in this conversation. But how do we control it? Interestingly enough, the invitation that we have sent out for this particular session talks about what is the mind. But we shall explore the mind's what, towards the end rather than the beginning. The question is, because it is so abstract, how can we control it? And for that, we look at the Holy Swar Ved and its amazing and impeccable teaching of how to access this most abstract of all dimensions. As per Vihangam Yoga, if we take the summary of how to access the mind, most of the time the mind resides in our eyesight, or extending that logic a little further, in memories based on it, memories that lie in the chit. So the chit is like your RAM or perhaps your hard drive, from wherein you get your memories. So most of the time we see our mind is on our conscious eyesight. In our waking hours, we are where our eyes are looking. And if we are not there, for example, you could say that you're being absent-minded, it's because your mind has gone to another primarily visual-driven memory, right? So you could be driving the car, but you could be thinking about something else. And when you reflect on it, you realize that that second-order thinking is based on primarily a visual memory. So logically, it flows that if we need to control it, we need to control our eyesight. But how do we do it? How do we control our eyesight? We then look at the Swar Ved, which says that the conscious stream that emanates from the mind, going out through both eyes, needs to converge at a particular focal point where the mind is the weakest. Because no matter what we do, we are our minds at this present moment. And though we are trying to use buddhi to control it, we are unable to do so because we are so much in the grip of our mind. Right now, we are our mind. Therefore, we look at the point of initiation, which is the mind's weakest point in the first stage of Brahma Vidya Vihangam Yoga. A particular technique that is given explicitly in the Gita, for those who know, in the chapter on meditation, chapter number 6. For as long as we're looking at that particular point of initiation, we get access to control our mind. And the mind takes us away. And then we try, and through practice, we get it back under control. and yet it sways. So what do? We aim for satsang. That is, instead of just sitting down in solitude by ourselves for all days of the week and all weeks of the year, we seek the company of those who are similarly inclined towards the truth. And most importantly, we seek the blessings and the guidance of a great soul who has already conquered his mind, who has already been through this journey. Just imagine, can you even learn an experiential subject like driving or swimming by joining up a correspondence course or a distance learning program? Can you excel at it? We can't. Look at it from the perspective of students who are doing their PhD, who move on to uncharted territory. For as long as we are students at lower levels, we have a rigid framework, we know what we want to achieve, and we go step by step. But as you move into uncertainty, it is the guide who can only give you access to that degree that you really want. So transcending all of this requires the presence, the blessings of a very, very, very powerful and a realized soul. Therefore, when we seek satsang, we do so under the guidance of the one and only Sadguru, the one and only true teacher. Moving on to how we control the mind. His Holiness Sadguru Sri Swatantra Dev Ji Maharaj has referred to the following, which translates into, you are what you eat. So before we sit to even control the mind, we must be careful of what we eat. We should eat foods that promote a sambhav. Avoid completely eating junk food. Avoid foods that make your mind deviate further in a state of flux. Eat healthy, fresh food and only in quantities that you really require. Once we sit down in satsang, and when satsang is not possible, let us say in solitude, do keep the photograph of your ultimate guide, the Sadguru, in front of you. When we practice control of the breath, why do we do so? When the Swarved says that the mind, the man and the pran, the force of breath, are inextricably interlinked for the uninitiated, that is, how does control over one give control over the other? Let us try a practical demonstration which should take no longer than 15-20 seconds again. No matter where our mind is right now, no matter what our little voice is telling us right now, let us try this simple exercise. Exhale your breath completely. Exhale it completely and stop it. Stop your breath completely after exhaling it. Let your brain, let your body not get any oxygen right now. And notice your mind. Notice your mind. No matter how far it is, no matter which planet it may have gone to, the mind is going to rush back. The mind is going to knock on the door and tell the buddhi, the voluntary force, the involuntary force is telling the voluntary force, do something about it, I'm going to die. Let's start breathing again. So you see, the moment you stopped your breath, for a little longer than a normal comfort zone, the mind rushed back, no matter where you were. This is just one little example of showing how the mind is related to breath, the prana. Now, while this demonstrates the complete effectiveness of this particular correlation, the problem is it doesn't give us a guide on how to proceed in controlling the mind, because we can't stop breathing every time, right? We'd surely die. So we have a more purposeful, structured way of approaching it by controlling our breath through the exercise of pranayam. And the exercise of pranayam is an integral part of the first stage of Vihangam Yoga. Therefore, we sit down in a particular asana, which also promotes the stability and equanimity of mind, called the Siddhasana, wherein the body forms the shape of a pyramid. We engage ourselves in breath control, the pranayam. Then we take up chanting, depending on our location. Some of us chant Om, some of us chant the Gayatri Mantra, depending on what is easy for us. And we go into the point of initiation. The point of initiation really is the doorway, the real doorway, and that is where the real first stage, or you could say a pre-introductory stage of our yoga starts. Because as we know, that real Vihangam Yoga starts at a different level altogether. However, we seek to control our minds by entering this particular portal. That's all from us here in Noida, folks. We shall continue this quest in following sessions, and we hope you can join us and stay with us. Thank you. Sadgurudev Bhagwan Ki Jai.
Wow, very big thanks to Raghavendra ji. What a wonderful explanation of this very deep and, important topic to all of us. Because as Raghavendra ji was saying, the control of mind is not something that we can ignore. Unfortunately, the way in which we exist, every element of our body is interlinked. Every element of our existence is interlinked. And at its roots, as Raghavendra very beautifully explained to us, is the nature of mind. So I'd like to once again say a big thank you to Raghavendra for such a wonderful speech and such a wonderful explanation. As he mentioned, there are a few more parts in this session which we'd like to proceed towards. I'd like to quickly take another moment to remind you all. I've already seen some questions on our WhatsApp group and on our Slido link. I'd like to remind you all to please put any questions you have on both of those platforms so that we can address them in an appropriate way. I'd now like to move towards our bhajan for the day from Rekhaji. Rekhaji has been joining us very regularly on this platform and gracing us with her wonderful voice and her beautiful explanations of the bhajans which she presents to us. So I'd like to pass it over to Rekhaji to take the control and present a bhajan.
Thank you, Abhinavji, and Jai Sadgurudev, everybody. Bhajan. कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार, कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। नहीं संतोष क्षमाशील मोरे नहीं संतोष, क्षमाशील मोरे नहीं कछु बुद्धि विचार, नहीं कछु बुद्धि विचार। ज्ञान विराग एक नहीं मोरे, ज्ञान विराग एक नहीं मोरे, नहीं कछु कर्म आचार। कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। काम क्रोध मद लोभ माया, काम क्रोध मद लोभ माया, रोम रोम में बसत विकार, रोम रोम में बसत विकार। सकल गुण कहाँ ले वरनो, सकल गुण कहाँ ले वरनो, पार न वर्ष हजार। कैसे करे हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। विषय माया प्रबल स्वामी, विषय माया प्रबल स्वामी, सुर नर मुनि सब हार, सुर नर मुनि सब हार। ब्रह्मादिक सन कादिक हारे, ब्रह्मादिक सन कादिक हारे, मैं कैसे पई हूँ पार, कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। कौन विधि तब पद के सुमिरो, कौन विधि तब पद के सुमिरो, मैं अति नीच गवार, मैं अति नीच गवार। गिरे सदा फल शरण में तेरो, गिरे सदा फल शरण में तेरो, पालक नाम तोहार। कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। कैसे करी हूँ पार, कैसे करी हूँ पार प्रभु जी, कैसे करी हूँ पार। Through this bhajan, कैसे करी हूँ पार, Sadgurudev has expressed the internal feeling of every soul who wants to get themselves free from this mortal land and establish back into its purest form. And this can be attained only under the lotus feet of Sadguru, because only Sadguru can break this shackle and liberate a soul. With this, I would like to conclude here. Boliye Sadgurudev ki jai. Over to you, Abhinav ji.
Thank you very much, Rekha ji, for this beautiful bhajan. As Rekha ji explained in her beautiful voice, there are so many things which have a weight on our consciousness. Kam, Krodh, Modh, Lobh, Maya, all of these different forces are trying to bring us back into the world, whilst our soul, shackled, is trying to free itself. Now we move on to a very exciting part of our session, the Q&A session. First, a thanks to all the seekers and viewers who are listening for putting forward your queries and questions. Of course, we're only here to help each and every one of you and ourselves to understand all these concepts in a deeper way. We are now joined by Shekharji from Australia as well. Professionally, Shekharji is a quality and compliance manager at Open Colleges and he's an avid practitioner of Vihangam Yoga for many, many years. Shekharji has many experiences which I'm sure he can share with all of us, and I welcome him to this part of the session. We will also, of course, be joined by our prime speaker of the day, Raghav, who will also be helping us dive into these questions. In the interest of time, I'd like to request both speakers, please, I'm sure there's not enough time to dive as deeply as we want to into each of these questions, but let's try and keep it to maybe 3 to 4 minutes each and try and get through as many of these as we can. So first, I'd like to place a question towards Shekharji. There's actually 2 questions which seem quite related. One, a seeker is asking, do we have multiple ways to control the mind? And another question which we've received is, why should I bother to control mind when I feel refreshed by any other form of unwinding activities? So, as we go into the world and we start to look into this idea of controlling mind, there are many things which seem to help in that process. So let's dive into these 2 questions with Shekharji. Do we have multiple ways to control mind? And why bother control it when I can unwind myself in other ways? Shekharji.
Hello, everybody. It's a fantastic question, and I think it relates to all of us because at the end of the day, this is one topic which we hear from everyone, that controlling the mind is absolute must to live a happy life. So the questions, we'll look at it. The first question which says, do we have multiple ways to control the mind? The simple answer is yes, but it's more important I go into the depth of that. The second question, why should I bother to control the mind when I feel refreshed by any other form of unwinding activities? This is where the confusion comes in the world. And this is where we all have different opinion and different ways of trying to control the mind. First of all, I would like to say that what we are trying to discuss today is to understand the depth of it, the what, why, where, and how of mind control. So the most fundamental thing which we need to understand is that we can only act and try to control something when we know about its existence, where it is, how does it emanate, and where do we need to take it, by what techniques, so that we are able to control. In a most common speak on a daily basis, if somebody says to you that you have to catch a thief in your house, you need to know where the thief is, and then you need to know how to catch the thief. So in Vihangam Yoga philosophy, Sadhguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj, the founder of Vihangam Yoga, he explained to us, and Raghavendra was touching base on that topic. Where exactly does the mind exist? So there are different states where the mind exists within our body. And the most important one for us to understand is that it is in the awakened state, it goes with our eyes. And that's the reason why the prescribed practice of Sadhguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj shows us how to control that at that point. But then the next question is that as the part which is mentioned here, that when I'm refreshed by other unwinding activities. So let's understand there's a big difference between refreshing by unwinding activities and having a control over the mind. We know that the mind is so powerful that there is no instrument by which we can measure its strength, its speed, its agility, and its force by which it can destroy anything. There is nothing in this cosmos which exists that can help us measure that. The speed with which it moves. So how can we control such a thing by going into an activity of unwinding? That's a question which we need to ask ourselves. Do you believe that by different practices which are available to us, we will be able to control that? In fact, the Vihangam Yoga philosophy says that the mind is not something, an ordinary thing which has been created by someone. It actually emanates from the Akshar Brahma itself. And when we are talking of something which is beyond the realm of our human capability to control it, we also need to understand that we have to engage into practices which are more than just an unwinding activity or a practice based on some physical form or a practice which is based on some sort of chanting of mantra or doing some sort of activities which gives us calmness and peace for a moment. So it's a very big topic which is difficult to explain in 2 sentences or in 3 minutes, but it only starts when we are committed. So the first step is to understand, where does it exist? Where does it emanate from? What are the techniques to control it? And then absolute commitment from our own selves that yes, I'm going to apply myself with this practice to be able to see how I am progressing in controlling the mind. I hope within the limitation of the time, I have done justice to this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shekharji, for such a great explanation. And it's great because our last question for the day, it touches on something which Shekharji also just mentioned, that there are two forces within our body, one which is mind and one which is the soul. So the seeker is asking, and I'll put this question to Raghavendraji, who I hope you can hear me. So I'll be putting this question to you about these two forces. The question which the seeker is putting to us is, how do I know if my mind or my soul is telling me to do something? How can I identify which force is making me act? So Raghavendraji, if you could please take us into this question, and then we'll proceed towards the end of our session.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. That is a very interesting question, because for as long as we are within the realm of nature and within the realm of the mind, we can never distinguish between the man buddhi. So the man is the involuntary roaming of this abstract concept that we are calling, and the buddhi is the controlled logic, the one that tells you that, okay, no, this is not time for me to be whiling away, sitting under a tree and philosophizing. This is time for me to be, I don't know, studying or preparing for the next day or eating. So the voluntary part, the deliberate part, is the buddhi that seeks to control the mind. But the soul, you see, the thinking of the soul, right now, it's verily impossible to distinguish between what your soul is telling you and that what the mind or the buddhi, right, that it's very important to distinguish between the two, are telling you. You can distinguish the mind from the buddhi, yes, but not the soul's thinking right now. This is something that only an exalted soul, a great guide such as the Sadguru, can do for you. Therefore, if you want to answer this question really, you need to take up the practice of Vihangam Yoga, and under the guidance of the Sadguru, at a particular stage when you realize the soul, and I must admit that is yet beyond me, only under his guidance can you really answer the question and know what your soul wants. Thank you, Abhinavji.
Thank you, Raghavendraji, and thank you to all of our seekers who are putting forward such wonderful questions, really, pushing us to understand these concepts in such a deep way. So with this, our session is coming to a close. We would like to finish with a prayer, a traditional prayer, which is the Shanti part. And for this, I'd like to welcome once more our wonderful singer and young boy, Sanatji, to present the Shanti part so that we can now conclude this session and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinav uncle. Jai Sri Gurudev to everyone. Shanti Path. हे प्रभु शांति स्वरूप हो, शांति शांति में शांति, शांति शांति जन शांति में, पूर्ण शांति में शांति। हे प्रभु शांति प्रदान कर, दूर हो सर्व शांति, देव सदा फल शांति में, शांति शांति सुख शांति। बोले सद्गुरुदेव की जय।
Thank you so much, Sanatji. I really hope that I can one day become as wonderful as you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this brings us towards the end of our session. And let's just do a quick recap. We started with beautiful prayers from Sanatji and then dove into the Svarved, where our master told us that the mind is the source of all disturbance, and that the mind, when uncontrolled, can wreak havoc on our lives. In trying to understand this further, we were then joined by Raghavendraji from Noida, India. And he explained to us wonderfully how different models can be applied to think about this topic, whether it be classical physics, quantum physics, trying to understand the what, where, and how of mind. But ultimately, the control of mind is something which we must practice in a committed way every day of our lives. We at VYGOS are very passionate about this topic. And as was mentioned a few times, there is a technique which can allow us to fruitfully move forward on this path. If that technique is of interest to you, please do get in touch with us through either our WhatsApp group or any of the mediums which are present on our website as well. Of course, if you still have questions about this topic, do not worry. We are here to listen to those questions and to address those questions. So please do continue putting your questions on Slido, sending them on WhatsApp, in any way which you are comfortable. Because we are, of course, here only to satiate your curiosity and address your curiosity. VYGOS is, of course, run every week. And so next week, we'll have another wonderful topic ready for you. With this, I'd like to bring us to a close. And of course, a big thank you to our speaker panel today, Sanatji from the US, Subhasji from Singapore, Rekhaji also, who joined us with a beautiful bhajan from the US, Shekharji from Australia, and of course, our prime speaker of the day, Raghavendraji. I, Abhinav from Australia, wish you all a wonderful week ahead. And I hope that today we were able to do some justice to this very deep and meaningful question. I'd like to end just with one small doha from Sant Kabir. Man ki tarang ko maar lo, bas ho gaya bhajan. Aadat puri sudhar lo, bas ho gaya bhajan. I hope you will excuse me for my pronunciation a bit there, but the mind, is the source of all disturbance. Let's try our best to free ourselves and celebrate life in all its beauty. Thank you, everyone, and let's reconvene in a week. Jai Gurudev all.